Let's just start with the raw physical reality of this. You're standing in the middle of a dry, dusty field, miles from any ocean, and you're looking at a structure that is 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. In modern terms, that's roughly 450 feet long. It's longer than a football field, and it's stretching 50 feet up into the air. This isn't some little, triangular houseboat like we see in the children's Sunday school books with the giraffe heads popping out of the roof. This is a massive, towering, rectangular chest of dark wood, leaking the sharp, pungent smell of hot pitch and pine. And the man holding the adze, his hands covered in calluses and splinters, has been working on this single, absurd monument for decades. And what's wild to me is that this isn't just about the sheer physical stamina, though goodness knows lifting gopher wood timbers day after day under a hot sun is enough to break anyone. It's the environment he's doing it in. The Genesis text paints this picture of a world that is completely, systematically saturated with violence. The Hebrew word is Hamas. It's this lawless, self-asserting, predatory chaos. It's a culture where taking what you want by force is it's just Tuesday. It's normalized. And in the very middle of this culture, Noah is practicing this agonizing, slow, daily discipline of obedience. Every single strike of his hammer on those massive wooden pegs is this loud, echoing, countercultural statement. It's like a bell tolling, warning everyone who hears it that the current way of living is completely unsustainable. But you see, the design itself tells us this isn't just a survival capsule. If you look at the actual layout, it's got these three distinct decks, and it's built to precise proportions that mirror something very specific. In ancient Near Eastern thought, these three levels, the lower, middle, and upper decks, they directly correspond to the three-tiered structure of the cosmos, and more specifically, the temple. The temple in ancient Israel was seen as a microcosm of the creation, a place where God's space and human space overlapped. So the ark isn't just a boat, it's a temple home. It's a floating sanctuary designed to preserve the seed of a new creation. While the world outside is dissolving back into the watery chaos of the unformed deep, inside this three-tiered wooden temple, order, holiness, and life are being carefully, systematically preserved. And can you imagine the suffocating social pressure of that? I mean, day after day, year after year, your neighbors walk by, they're living their lives, buying, selling, marrying, completely indifferent to this giant wooden box rising in the dust. The sheer, crushing weight of their apathy must have been harder to bear than the physical labor. To be the only builder of a future no one else believes in, it forces you to find your identity entirely in the voice of the one who called you to build it, rather than the mocking whispers of the crowd watching you do it. And then comes the day when the building stops, and the doors are actually shut. And this is where the narrative takes this incredibly dark, almost claustrophobic turn. Genesis says that after Noah and his family and all those animals go inside, Yahweh himself shuts the door behind them. Think about the gravity of that moment. The heavy wooden door swings shut, the light from the outside world is completely cut off, and you hear the dead thud of the latch dropping into place. But it's not Noah who drops the latch, it's God. This is a symbolic death. Entering that dark, sealed, windowless interior is like stepping into a floating coffin. You are transition. You're completely transitioning from being the active builder, the guy with the tools, the guy in control of the project, to being a completely passive passenger. You're locked in, and inside it's not quiet. You've got the low, nervous grunting of beasts, the rustle of straw, the damp, heavy air, and the smell of thousands of living things packed into a tight space. And notice the details about the animals. They aren't just crammed in there randomly. There is a strict distinction made between the clean and the unclean animals. The clean animals are brought in by sevens, the unclean by twos. This is a direct foreshadowing of the Levitical law, the priestly code of clean and unclean that would later define life in the tabernacle. Even here, in the dark, floating temple, there is a liturgy of life. There is a sacred order. They are learning how to live in close proximity to the holy, even while the storm is raging directly outside their wooden walls. And then the rain starts, and the fountains of the deep burst open. The ark begins to pitch and groan as it lifts off the dry earth. And for months, they are just waiting, floating on an endless, featureless gray sea. And here's the most striking detail about the architecture. There are no side windows to look out at the destruction. There's only a single opening, a sohar, a skylight, and it is positioned at the very top, pointing straight up toward the heavens. Think about the psychological reality of that design. You cannot look laterally to see how far you've drifted, or to look for landmarks, or to see if the water is receding. Your only perspective is upward, into the gray, empty sky. It is this forced, agonizing discipline of spiritual rest. You have absolutely no control over your trajectory. You can't steer. You can only look up, waiting for the one who shut you in to remember you. And then, finally, after almost a full year of darkness and sloshing water, the doors opened. But when they step out, they don't find a lush green paradise. They step out onto a landscape of total eerie silence. It's a world covered in thick, drying mud, smelling of salt and decay. The old world is completely gone, washed away, and what's left is this raw, empty slate. And what is the very first thing Noah does? He doesn't start building a house. He doesn't search for clean water or try to secure a food supply. He doesn't build a shelter to protect his family from the elements. He builds an altar. He takes some of those precious, clean animals, the ones he spent a year keeping alive, and he offers them as a sacrifice of worship. He recognizes that before you can rebuild your life, you have to reestablish your center. Worship is the first act of the new creation. And it's in response to this fragrance of worship that God makes this incredible covenant, and he sets his bow in the clouds. Now, we look at the rainbow today and we think of something soft, something pretty, like a pastel painting. But in the ancient world, a bow was a weapon of war. It was the instrument of death and destruction. When a warrior finished his battle, he would hang his bow up on the wall of his tent, unstrung, pointing away. And when God sets his bow in the clouds, the text uses the word keshet. It's a military archer's bow. And where is it pointed? It's pointed upward, away from the earth, toward the heavens. It's a stunning visual metaphor of self-vulnerability. If the bow is drawn, the arrow will fire upward, into the heart of heaven itself, rather than down at humanity. It is a permanent cosmic promise of mercy, a declaration that God's justice will bear the wound before it destroys the creation again. And that, I think, is the ultimate invitation of this entire journey. We all face those seasons where our world is shaking, where we feel shut into the dark, unable to see where we're going, with nothing but a single window looking upward. But the story of the ark reminds us that the storm is never the final word. The silence of the mud eventually gives way to the altar of worship, and the dark clouds of judgment are always, inevitably, spanned by a bow of peace, pointing toward a mercy that runs deeper than our deepest wreckage. Well, that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks for sitting with these stories with me. Talk to you soon.